A man sleeps by the ruins of an ancient Egyptian temple. In his arms he clutches an ancient vase and an Egyptian book of the dead. A beautiful young woman decides to take the book while he is sleeping and use a mechanical metal key to open the large inscribed metal book. Her companion expresses doubts about whether it's a good idea to mess around with the Book of the Dead. To which she quips, "No harm ever came from reading a book." She starts to read the book aloud and, lo and behold, a half-rotted ancient Egyptian corpse comes to life with a terrifying screech. This not very well-preserved mummy then proceeds to kill off people one by one, thereby increasing his strength and preparing him for his quest to find and resurrect his long-lost love. If you are like most people, this scene from the 1999 film The Mummy is probably the type of thing you think about when you hear Egyptian Book of the Dead. And even if you've never seen the film, just the name of this text, Book of the Dead, is certainly enough to evoke scary and dangerous scenes in your mind. But what is the Egyptian Book of the Dead really? Was it meant to wake up the dead who would then walk the earth? Is it even a book at all? You might be surprised to learn that the answer to these last two questions is no. But let's take a look at why. Let's start with this last question. Is it a book? In The Mummy, Evelyn, or Evie as she is called, opens an old, large, creepy, bound metal book. But the ancient Egyptians did not have bound books at all, and the binding together of separate pages into what we think of as a book is a technique that would not come to Egypt until the 1st century of this era. Instead, the ancient Egyptians wrote on materials like papyrus scrolls, wood, stone, cloth, and even their broken dishes. And the Book of the Dead can appear on all of these materials, although it is most famously known for being on papyrus scrolls. Also, when we say book today, we think of a text that generally doesn't change at all. For example, let's say that you're out shopping one day and you see a copy of Fellowship of the Ring in a bookstore. You decide not to buy it. Then later, when you're at home, you think about it some more and realize you really do want to have a copy after all, so you hop online and buy one. A couple of days later, the book arrives. And while you do not expect it to be the exact same one that you saw in the store, you do expect it to contain the exact same text. However, the ancient Egyptian Book of the Dead was not like this at all, and in fact, almost every copy is unique in some way. Thus, even calling each one a copy is already somewhat of a misnomer, much less calling the whole collection of text a book. So how is this possible? Well, it's because what we call the Book of the Dead today is not really a book at all, but rather over 200 individual texts, usually called spells or chapters by modern scholars. These 200-plus texts could be used alone or together in various combinations on materials like papyrus scrolls, which could be as long as 23.5 meters or 77 feet. Of course, they could also occur on any of the materials that I mentioned before, and also on amulets and small figurines. The name Book of the Dead was actually invented by the 19th century Egyptologist Carl Lepsius, and is not the ancient Egyptian name for this collection of texts. In fact, the ancient Egyptians titled the beginning of many of these collections of texts, quote, "The spells of coming forth by day." In other words, the texts were meant to continue life by helping a person's spirit go out and be active during the day. A very different sentiment from what our modern name for the texts would suggest. Okay, so we've established that the book part in Book of the Dead is a misnomer, but what about it being of the dead? And our other questions, namely, what is the ancient Egyptian Book of the Dead really? Is it meant to wake up the dead who will then walk the earth? You'll have to stay tuned as I'll answer these in part 2 of this 2-part video series. And for those of you who want to dive into the Book of the Dead even deeper, I've included links to books that I recommend in the description below. If you've enjoyed this video, do give it a thumbs up. And also, to make sure that you don't miss part 2 and other videos, hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.